welcome back to the Flicks Forum podcast, where each episode we check out a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix's 96th film for you. It is the 2018 comedy The Legacy of Whitetail Deer Hunter. It's directed by Jody Hill. It stars Josh Brolin, Montana Jordan, and Danny McBride. I'm Jesse, and I've got MJ here with me. How are you, MJ?
I'm well, mate. How are you?
Good. It's always nice to catch up, and I've been looking forward to hearing your voice the past week.
I'm glad.
It
I hope
seems
that
too long.
it does, doesn't it? Actually, no. We are. Well, full disclosure, we are recording a day later than we normally do, purely because of my busy schedule. But I have been looking forward to talking about this film ever since I watched it. So it's. I'm looking forward to this as well.
Good. Well, I want you to start off and start talking about it for us with your fast flicks, where you give us your quick little summary of the film. So go for it for me.
All right. So we got Hollywood heavyweight Josh Brolin in a parody role of a deer hunter trying to pass on his family's hunting legacy to his son.
Lovely. Yes, it's very close to what I've got. I've said it's a father and son story told through a hunting trip.
No,
It's
it's really quite different, Jesse.
no, not really. Like you said, this you mentioned the hunting thing, the
Yeah,
legacy, those types of things. So
true.
I think that we've seen the same film, and I think that we're probably going to be talking a bit about this father-son relationship throughout this chat. And I'm probably going to put the spoiler alert out now
Sure.
because I think this one I'm going to probably spoil early on. So if you want to watch this one, you're in the mood for a comedy, give us a pause, go and watch it, and then come back and listen because we're going to spoil this one quite early. So hope you enjoy it and pause. And now we're back. All right, MJ.
I'm looking forward to your early spoil.
I just had a feeling I was going to spoil this one. So
Nah, good. Nah,
film
better be
history.
safe.
What have you
Yeah,
found out about this one?
there's a there's a little bit of a story here. Nothing too exciting, but basically the idea of this film or the concept of this film has been in the works for a while. So I think Jody Hill wrote the script a long time ago. I think he actually wrote it after he finished directing Observe and Report, which was 9 years before this film actually came out. So he was he was quite busy with a lot of TV stuff during that time, and he sort of wrote the script. And I think Danny McBride had a look at it as well, and he had another writer as well who'd looked at it. But this script has sort of been floating around for some time, and then um, June 2015 was when I found out that Danny McBride and Josh Brolin were announced that they'd star in the film. So this is quite a while ago, June
Yeah,
2015.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And in November 2015 was when Montana Jordan, the kid, came into the film. So it was, again, as I said, directed by Jody Hill, co-wrote with McBride, there you go, and John Carcieri. And it was produced by Scott Rudin Productions and Rough House. So Rough House is Danny McBride, Jody Hill, and David Gordon Green's production company, and they produced Eastbound and Down. So they were sort of on board this the whole time. And then they basically started filming in October. They filmed for 3.5 months, give or take, in Asheville, North Carolina. Apparently, it was a pretty grueling shoot because obviously a lot of it was done in the woods with hunting terrain. I don't know how else you want me to say it, but and because it was an independently financed movie, when they were finished, Netflix was really keen to see it. They had a look at the movie before anybody else did, and they bought it straight off the back of that. So obviously there was that gap sort of between the movie finishing at the start of 2016 and not coming out on Netflix until mid 2018. Well, I got 6th of July 2018. So obviously just getting it right and trying to find the right spot for it.
Yeah, and this one, it played at South by Southwest in March of 2018 as well. So it had a little bit of a few months prior release, which is a little bit. It's a bit of a big. We used to have quite a lot of the Netflix films where they had they debuted at Sundance or somewhere like that, and there was a bit of a wait until it hit Netflix. So it's been a while since we've had one that's had a 4 month sort of delay between a theatrical screening and hitting Netflix.
Yeah, it's still interesting to see that basically that 2 year gap between finishing filming it and South by Southwest, and I couldn't find any reason as to why.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Josh Brolin, he gained 40 pounds for this role. That's a
Yeah,
lot of weight. That's an awful lot of weight.
I did.
And I didn't really notice it, I guess.
Neither did I. But I mean, he was a bit bulkier. But I mean, you could easily put that down to he was wearing sort of full length clothes the whole time. He was hunting, so he had hunting gear with him, and
Mm.
um, yeah, I think it was a pretty tough shoot for him. So it's it's credit to him for doing it, for doing a role like this, putting on the weight, really committing to it. So well done, Josh Brolin. I'm a huge Josh Brolin fan. I really like him.
Oh, good. Yeah, there are also a few things in this movie that are sort of influenced by this legendary actual whitetail deer hunter called Roger Raglan, and
Mm,
this BFK Productions that they sort of use throughout this film is similar to his own production thing, which he called BKS. Um,
yep.
and that there's some scenes in the film that they borrow music from his actual hunting videos.
Ah,
So
did they?
it's nice. Yeah, so it's nice that they've got these little connections that they're sort of paying homage to, I guess. That there are TV shows that exist that are similar to, I guess, what they were producing through this film that we were watching.
Well, Jody Hill
Yeah.
has never been hunting before. So here he is writing this movie and then filming this movie. Never been hunting before, didn't know much about it. But I believe, I think it was John Carcieri started like showing him these hunting videos online and what was actually available and what some people do film. And they were kind of like, this is something. Like there's something here. We can make something out of this. So that's
It,
kind of how it started. I was sort of fascinated to know that.
it sort of reminds me of these. If you watch Tiger King on Netflix, it sort of reminds me of these videos, these in-house little studio productions that uh, that Joe King created through his own sort of little production company. That's very hammed up and has these really cheesy sort of title graphics and things like that. So it sort of gave these memories of these sorts of characters that you do know or you have seen in other things as well.
It's like an
Very fun.
80s VHS kind of setup, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, just the production values are, they're purposely on the low end to give that feel.
I don't know. Yeah,
um,
I don't know if it's purpose. I think it's budget constraints
but
and restrictions, and maybe even expertise.
yeah. I had a look at some translations for the title of this one because I had a bit of fun doing this the other week when we did. I can't remember what the film was. I think it was the French film
It
where
was, yeah, yeah.
yeah, in different countries,
To each
the
her own. It was,
title
yeah.
is different. Yeah, that one. So in Brazil, this film was called My First Hunt,
Oh yeah.
and I've got to be very very careful that I put the emphasis on the H, the letter H. So My First Hunt. In Italy, Spain, and Poland, it was called Hunting with Dad, and that's with a
Oh,
H as well.
okay,
And then in France, it was called My Dear Hunter Dad. And
okay.
I like that. I like that double meaning for the word deer, I guess. So I didn't mind that
Ah,
the French
okay.
title.
I
It was
didn't get that when you said it. Okay, yeah,
yeah.
that's clever.
So
My dear hunter dad.
yeah, I thought that was
Hang on,
quite
how do
clever.
they
So
spell deer?
like the animal,
Ah, okay.
but still, like when you say
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I like that. I thought that was good.
So I sometimes have issues with long titles.
Mm,
So they don't really work. And this title on the surface doesn't really work for me either. The Legacy of a White-tailed Deer Hunter, but watching the film, I'm kind of okay with it. It sits okay with me. But yeah, like my first hunt is still good as well, and
yeah.
my dear father, or whatever, dear hunter father.
Yeah, it's. I completely agree because if you did want to recommend this film to someone, it's one of those titles that doesn't stick in my head at all. Like I've had
No.
to reread this title, and we had this with a couple of other films that have had long titles from Netflix, like "I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House,"
Mm,
and along those lines. Like now I know that the title of the film, and maybe in 12 months' time I'll remember this one. But it's one of those ones that it's like, oh, it's about deer hunting, but I can't remember the
mm,
a white-tailed deer to me. I don't know. I didn't know what a white-tailed deer was. I just,
no.
deers sort of thing. Yeah.
I love the word legacy in there because
Mm,
that is a big part of the film.
yeah, it sure is. Well, are you ready for some critical consensus? I think we can
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit. Yeah. What
yeah. I
did you
think we're.
find?
Um, Firstly, there's not a heap of ratings for it. Um,
Hmm,
so IMDb only has just over 3,000 ratings on it, and it's a 5.5 out of 10. So it's modest. It's below par. It's not all that popular, and that's even a bit lower on Letterboxd at 2.6 out of 5, and that's 2,500 ratings. So it's on the lower side for both those platforms.
yeah. The Google users, there was 80% that liked this one, so that's a little bit reflective, a little bit higher, I guess.
Yep.
But Rotten Tomatoes didn't like this one. This
Okay.
was It didn't have a consensus, but it was rotten on 30%, and that's on 23 reviews.
Okay.
And the audience also had it at 42%, but that's on 130 odd.
Small,
So
small sample
yeah,
size.
it's very small, but still very low
Yep.
for
Nah.
yeah, yeah. All right, well, early thoughts time. What are your early thoughts on this one?
I've already dropped this, but I love Josh Brolin. I think he's a master. Like most things I see him in, he just steals the limelight. Like he's obviously No Country for Old Men, Inherent Vice. He's Thanos. Like Thanos is the greatest villain in my eyes in cinematic history, and a lot of that is to do with with Josh Brolin. Sicario, he's great in that. But I was 1 minute into this movie, and my excitement from this cast had subsided really quickly. And like Danny McBride is, you know, what you get with Danny McBride. I think he's funny.
Mm.
Um, but this concept just never really made sense to me, and I was kind of uncomfortable with the idea of killing deers as a key to the plot. Um,
Yeah.
so the movie just it did very little for me, and if Josh Brolin can't squeeze something out of that, then it's really hard for it to be salvaged by anyone in my books.
Yeah, I agree. The start was as soon as you see the start and you're like, what am I in for here?
Mm.
But I enjoyed this one. I
Ah, good. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it sort of it wears its message on its sleeve like so clearly, and I had some good laughs. I had quite a few giggles in this one, and it's not meant to be taken too seriously. And
No,
sometimes I go into a lot of these chats that we have going. I need to pull out the serious side of things, but this one, I sort of appreciated that they didn't want to be taken too seriously, and that connected with me. So yeah, I like this one.
that's good. I wanted to like it, and I mean when we spoke about it briefly last week, and you said the cast and it's a comedy, and I'm like, cool, this is gonna be great. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just struggled to hit the mark with me.
I guess yeah, when you hear a film that you haven't heard of that sits in the deep dark corridors of Netflix, I guess um, we probably would have heard of it if it had a lot better reception.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You've got a Josh Brolin starred comedy with Danny McBride, and the director of Observe and Report, which you know isn't a small movie with Seth Rogen. Like you kind of expect more than 3,000 people to have rated it on IMDb, right? Like it's
Yeah,
2 years into its life on Netflix and not really doing a heap. But
yeah.
um, yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I wanted to like it. I must full disclosure. I watched this on Sunday night on a Sunday night after I'd spent 20 hours that weekend painting my house. And for what it's worth, I think I was in great mindset because I just wanted to sit back and watch comedy. But maybe also I was like, when I got annoyed in those first few minutes, it was hard to get me back. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I was looking forward
you
to it, and I just
yeah.
had nothing. I couldn't give it what it wanted.
You're gone way too early for this one.
Maybe I was, and
That
I want
happened.
to put that out there.
That happens to me a lot as well, so that's okay. Okay, character time. There's only three real characters that we need to talk about in this one.
Yeah, good.
So let's kick it off with Buck. Buck, what have you got to say about Buck? And
Yeah,
that's going
where
to
do
be
we like? Firstly, Buck Ferguson's a great name. What was that? What was the other hunter that you said this is based off? What was his name?
Roger Raglan.
Yeah, Buck Ferguson's so much better than Roger Raglan. But look, I think there's that really important context of the divorce and how he's basically a fish out of water when he's not with nature, and that separation from his family's really made him lose touch on what's important, and that kind of includes how to build and cultivate a relationship with the people you love, and you can include Don in that as well. He just has he just really lacks those social skills of what's important to build a relationship, and I was sort of unsure whether that's a part of who he is or whether that's happened. It's gotten gradually worse since the
Mm,
divorce and since that separation. I get the feeling it's the latter, that he's just sort of slipping away from that reality because he's not in a great place. But I did enjoy that sort of old school father trying to play dad to this modern day son, and
mm,
there's elements of that that work and there's elements that don't work. But there was a nice charm and a nice truth to that because Buck knows only one way, and that's the way that his dad taught him, and that was a different era. And his separation from Jaden, his son, is kind of like they're just worlds apart on some moments, and some things they're not. But it was just a good portrayal of all of that, and Buck was kind of interesting in that sense.
yeah, I think you've covered that really well. Like, I completely agree that I think this divorce was sort of that, um, the idea of the mother of his child that obviously means so much to him. Being with someone else, it just infuriates him, and
Mm,
this leads to him becoming more and more of an asshole as the film goes on. And you know, like you mentioned, he thinks he knows best as a father, and he thinks he knows what's best for his son, but um, the the idea of him being so focused on this deer or this hunt to make that relationship relatable and connectable for
mm,
Jaden. It does. It highlights that idea that the only time he feels like he's a man or he's in control is in the wilderness, and that's why when Jaden's not, his son's not accepting what he's trying to do, it just blows up even more and more, and it sort of just snowballs into this idea that when he's out in the wilderness, his cares are meant to disappear, and
mm,
things aren't meant to disturb him or worry him, but bringing his son out there has sort of taken that away from him as well, and he's just got this frustration that what he thinks will work and what he wants aren't actually happening because these two worlds are sort of colliding, and
mm.
his perceptions aren't where they need to be for where his son's at, I guess.
Yeah,
um,
that's a good point. And I actually think that I would be able to empathize with him a lot better if I had a son or a child of my own. The idea of planning something in your head and wanting your son to do something that you think is going to be really important and that you've done and that this is the only thing you know. I get that idea. I can't fully grasp what it might feel like because I'm just not in that headspace. But I kind of do understand that. Okay, so much is depending on this because this is what I know and this is how I planned everything to be, and that would be a frustrating feeling.
Yeah, yeah, completely. And yeah, I sort of want to. I'll talk about Jaden a little bit here, just as a continuation on what you've just said, because
Yeah,
like this kid to me, like I really connected with him. I don't know why, because I don't like
because you're a
hunting. I
brat.
don't.
No.
I'm a brat. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I sort of connected with this idea that his biggest fear is being an idiot, and the
Yeah,
idea that at school when he's with his dad in the wild, it's just this whole thing that he's got these insecurities just like Buck has as well, but they're just completely different stages in their lives.
yeah, it's
And
generational.
yeah, yeah, and Jaden's straight up to who he is the whole time. And like you mentioned earlier, like this whole idea of sort of, well, not counterculture, but there's no Wi-Fi, or he's worried
Yeah,
about what his girlfriend's thinking, and he's got to be calling her the whole time because they're his priorities. His priorities aren't
yeah,
to hunt this deer that he's never had any interest in. His priorities are what's happening with him once he gets off this weekend with his dad. So, and without his dad understanding what that's like, that friction was always going to be there, and they're never going to be able to have that connection that Buck was really after.
mm,
But I really did like, and I really enjoyed towards the end where you get to see Jaden make this decision about the mattress to get Don out of this
mm,
situation, and I just really enjoyed that. Um, you've been following this character who you think he quits when things are too hard, and you've got this situation that seems
mm.
absolutely impossible, but he's the one who's able to make this decision, and I just really enjoyed that. And I just really like that.
Yeah, that's a nice thought. I think as well with Jaden, like he was never he still wanted to go and he still wanted to kill deer. He just he just didn't want to do to the commitment level that A is probably just required, but B the way that Buck did it. So it's not like it was this kid who, oh, I don't want to go hunting with my dad, and then oh, all of a sudden this is actually great. I'm having some like it wasn't like that. Like this kid got it. He wanted to hunt. He was stoked when he got his gun, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, he was just a kid. Like all those points that you said about what his priorities are, like he was just a normal kid. It wasn't like he was one end of the spectrum to show how different he was from Buck. It was just like, no, this is just how kids are. This is not an
Mm.
extreme kid. This is what you would be doing if you were 12, 13 years old and you had a girlfriend back home. I say back home probably wasn't that far away, but like he was just a kid who loved his parents. He had no reason to not build a bond with his stepfather. Like that was just, I know it was hard for Buck to hear, but you got a kid who's 10 or 11 years old when your parents break up and another guy moves into your life for a couple of years, then how can you not build that connection? And he just wanted to stay connected with his mates. He still had time for his dad, but I like that it wasn't an extreme either way. It was all pretty normal.
Yeah, and I enjoyed as well that this connection that he had with Don.
Mm.
That this is the type of person he wanted his dad to be, a little bit more relaxed, a little more fun going, letting him sort of push the boundaries a little bit rather than this straight down the line sort of guy that he only gets to see every second weekend or whatever it is. And yeah, maybe that's a good segue into
I was
Don.
just going to say, you've just done another
Yeah, I
segue.
was yeah, I did that on purpose. What are you thinking of Don? Tell me your thoughts on Don.
Yeah, I had a little bit of trouble placing him, to be honest, because on one hand, he seemed to understand logic as well as anybody who was out there. He was empathetic. He could relate with Jaden, like you said. And on the other hand, he got bullied around in his job. He had a girlfriend who slept with other guys whilst he took photos. He shared those photos with a kid, and he somehow was in a strong enough financial position to retire earlier than it appeared he should have been. I couldn't figure him out.
I got the impression that the girlfriend's family and her, she was probably making so much money off these pornos that she was making that he'd be set and he could retire. But I agree. I think that I feel like he was this guy that was pretty comfortable with who he was, and he sort
Yeah,
of knew himself. And even if he had these weird sort of ideas of what a relationship was, he still, I think he was a positive role model or an alternative model of what a decent man can be. Like, just because
yeah,
he's
he
got
was a
these
good man.
different yeah, just because he's got these different ideas or thoughts on how
Mm,
his relationship is, doesn't mean he was a poor role model or anything like that. Yes, maybe he made the wrong choices in, but like, if you're hanging out with your best mate's kid, and you want to, like, you're going to try and be funny, you're going to try and be the cool guy. So maybe it was a little bit extreme the way he did it with his photos, but
yeah,
you're going to be that sort of guy, like, lend him the phone when he wants the phone because you want to look
yeah,
out
that
for this
stuff was
kid.
great.
And yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, good.
to be honest, for what it's worth, Don's the kind of guy that I'd be happy being mates with. Like,
Mm.
he seemed like he'd be a good mate. Um, I wouldn't want to dive too deep into his personal life. I think I'd leave that to him. But he seemed on the surface like a pretty good dude.
Yeah, it was nice just to have this alternative to Buck, who was like this man's man hunting.
Mm,
I'm the male, I know what's right, compared to Don, who's happy to go along with the flow and sort of be chill and allow people in his life to do what they want to do, rather than being told what to do, like Buck likes to do.
yeah,
Um,
no,
mm.
I think you bang on there.
Good. All right. Should we talk a little bit about Jody Hill?
Yeah,
As the director, I think you've done a good job early on of
yeah,
talking
I
about
covered
some
him
of
a
his
bit.
work.
Sorry.
Yeah, but I just thought that the connection that he has with Danny McBride. So he's the writer and director for the Foot Fist Way, Eastbound and Down, Vice Principals, which is another HBO show, as well as Eastbound and Down. And these are all with Danny McBride. So obviously they have a really good working relationship.
They
And
went to film school together.
there you go. Yeah, yeah,
So Danny
perfect. So
McBride, Jody Hill, and David Gordon Green, who's the other guy who's at one of their in their production company, they all went to film school together, and they've obviously stuck fat, similar to I guess like the Lonely Island guys. I think.
yeah, oh, good. All right, scene time.
Same time. Do you want to go
What?
first?
Yeah, okay, I can go
Yeah,
first.
I always go first.
Okay, yeah, I will. I might take up a little bit of time with this one because I've
All
got
right.
quite a few things that I liked in this one.
Well,
Uh,
I will. If you say one of mine, I'll just jump in and let you know.
Good. There's going to be some that you're going to think, "What the hell? Why did you like this?" But
Yeah,
we'll get to that
that's
because the
good, mate.
first one
Because
you
normally it's the other way around.
Yeah, well, the first one you're going to be like, "Oh, you're an idiot," but at and you probably already zoned out. Like at the start when they had this big quote on the screen, the scripture quote, John 3:16, about God loving a son. So like I said earlier, like putting the idea of this father son relationship right at the forefront. But I like that because I was like, that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Straight away, I was like, yes. I was like, bring back
Okay,
the wrestling days. So I was into it. I was like, yeah.
okay. I
Um,
was like, what are you talking about? Okay, there you
yeah,
go.
I liked that. It gave me an idea what the film was about, and it reminded me of Stone Cold, so that was cool. The,
Oh, it's
the
triple threat.
Triple Threat. I really liked the conversation between or multiple conversations between Buck and Don, where they're talking about just the way that he wants this TV show filmed. Like, I just really
Yeah,
liked that they went into this detail that they didn't dumb it down for the audience. Like, they talked about setup shots and slow pans and the shot types and the B roll and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. Just like hearing these two characters sort of riff about where they want the camera location. So I thought that was it was just nice to hear that in a film.
Okay.
Um, yeah, the first conversation that Don and Jaden have together when they get in the car together, and Don says to him, the only woman on this trip is Rosie Palmer and her five fingers, and like you get that joke, and then like he follows it up with like
You just kept
whack it
going.
off. Yeah, so I had a good laugh with that. I thought that was very funny. The comparison with the guns, like I just liked this idea of this family tradition versus this new upgrade that from Greg, or this better gun from Greg, which is sort of like a symbolizes how Buck's probably feeling about his relationship with Jaden and his ex-wife, that she's upgraded, she's got this newer, better sort of model, and just this idea of this family tradition of what the gun means to Buck. And then as well towards the end, when they're in the river, and Buck says to Jaden, I'm happy for you to let it go, just let it go. And I just liked that sort of moment where it's like, okay, Buck's more interested in Jaden than worrying about this hunting trip anymore.
Mm.
So I liked that. I thought that there was a really nice well, it wasn't really nice, I guess, but Don and Buck are, having this chat about Jaden because he's too busy on the phone to his girlfriend, and Don just has this line like, well, at least he's thinking about pussy. I thought that was funny. The blood on the boots, I really like that symbolism. The idea of Jaden's saying, "Oh, I'm not going to get blood on my brand new Timberland shoes," sort of thing, and then for him to actually get Don's blood on his shoes, and just that idea, that resonated really well with me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I thought this is another laugh where, Jaden's doing this parkour throughout the rocks and stuff. And then, Don sort of falls and hits his head on a rock. There's just this blood going everywhere. And then it
It
leads
looks
into him
super
talking.
painful because you see him in the background. And he just hits the deck.
And then he's just standing there, just running down his face. It was just, I thought that was hilarious. And then it sort of
Am I
follows on
bleeding?
where. And it follows on with him talking about, I'm dedicated to your dad, sort of thing, where, we went on this trip and I wanted to bail, and I ended up with frostbite and lost my big toe, and I've got balance issues. I just was
That
laughing.
was that was pretty funny when he's telling this great story. It's like, so what happened to your toe? And you assume it's gonna be fine. He's like, oh, I lost my big toe.
Yeah. I thought I liked the little conversation where Jaden sits down and goes, it's pretty funny hearing both these sides of the story about the divorce. And, his dad thinks that mum was selfish with the money, and the mum thinks that Buck was always going out hunting and drinking. I just liked that they showed both sides of the story. And Jaden was, strong enough to sort of say, oh, up front, well, mum's side of the story is very different to yours, sort of thing. I thought that was nice.
Well, that's the first one that I actually had in mind as well, because
Okay.
I really liked that chat as well, especially when Buck talks about how he fits in with reality versus when he's on his hunting trips, and how that world he is a world that he feels powerless in, and in turn he feels in complete control when there's no outside noise. And I think it was not only an insight of the character we probably already knew, but I enjoyed him divulging that to Jaden, and because what you've seen so far was a real surface level father and son, and it was him trying to break down to, this is actually who I am. And I thought that was a really, really good scene.
Good. Yes. You explained that a lot better than I did, so that was
No,
I enjoyed that.
I probably just covered a different side of it.
Different, yeah. I liked the rope bridge scene too. I was just laughing because this whole idea of Buck being this strong sort of guy, and then when it actually comes down to it, he's like, oh, no, we'll let Don go first, and this excuse of it being the better camera angle. So it sort of goes back into these conversations they've been having throughout about the best shot that they can get for their work. So I enjoyed that, just to show the other side of Buck's not as strong as he appears all the time. I actually laughed when Don showed those explicit photos to Jaden of his girlfriend. I just was not expecting that one little bit. Like, what was his line? He's like, she's into black fellas, and then you just see all these photos. I was like, oh wow, I was not expecting that. I might recommend this one to my mum. She might enjoy that scene.
And then he shows the photo. He goes, "There's my foot." It's me like this.
I thought that was great. I'm nearly done. I liked the shot where Jaden is, they've made it to this little waterfall, this beautiful little spot that looked completely CGI, but it was just this
Yeah.
nice little spot, and it just gave me these vibes from 2 weeks ago when we were watching Caliber,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it was literally, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is giving me vibes, and then bang, the same thing happens where he shoots instead of shooting the deer, he shoots a human, and I just thought that was hilarious that he hits Don. That made me laugh. And finally, I just really liked where at the end Jaden apologizes and says sorry for messing up, and he speaks about he failed at hunting like he fails at school, and Buck's response was he thought if you enjoyed this hunting with me, then we could do more stuff together. I just like this sort of soft little touch between the two where they
Mm,
both have these flaws that but they really do just love each other. So that was
mm.
my nice little thing that I liked.
You
Okay, your
certainly
turn.
liked this film, Jesse.
I did. When I was looking back and I was like, I enjoyed this. I thought it made me
Yeah.
laugh, and it's not very often I have a few giggles in a Netflix film. So yeah,
Yeah, no,
this one
you
did it.
don't actually. No, I'm glad you
Mm,
enjoyed it. It broke you
mm,
down, which is good.
good. All
I've
right,
only
your
got,
turn.
I only had 3 scenes, and you only took one of them. But
Okay.
the campfire scene at the start, I kind of liked that male bonding. And there were times when Jaden was really on board with everything they were doing, and obviously he was on board because he was getting some whiskey. But I enjoyed the scenes where Jaden was sort of a bit ho hum about going camping with them and enjoying that. So that was the first scene that I liked. Then, as I said, we said before about that father son chat they had after Carolyn dumped Jaden, and they spoke about the divorce. But the
Mm.
final scene that I liked was the final shot in the film was when Buck was lighting up that deer and he was hesitating. And I think as an audience, we'd got to a point where we really didn't want him to shoot it because these deers were so majestic and the way they framed them, you, you just got to feel like I'm by no means I'm not a vegetarian and I'm not against hunting or anything like that, but I fell for these deers really really quickly, and I think that was the desired effect. And
Yeah.
when he hesitated, I was kind of thinking, hang on, is he only killing deer because of a detachment that he had from humanity and family, and now that he's got that connection with his son who didn't want to shoot a deer, he's been doing this his whole life, and I do appreciate they left it somewhat ambiguous
Mm.
by him going back to the gun and then them cutting out. I think it was really well handled because I didn't want to see him shoot a deer. I also didn't want him to see them just completely ruin his character by, that's what he does is he shoots deers. So
Yeah.
I don't want him to change. So I just thought that whole thing was handled marvelously.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy that too. Just that ambiguity of does he just shoot that deer to complete this trip because that was the goal that he had, and he's such a that was he's so goal driven. So yeah, I completely agree. Yeah,
And
good finish.
I did not want to see one of those deer get shot. They were beautiful, and I didn't want to see it happen. And if it had ended with him shooting it, yeah, it would have been true to his character. But that little hesitation, because like let's be frank, we know that Jaden didn't shoot the deer because he just wasn't comfortable shooting a deer, right? Is that the vibe you got?
Um, I don't know.
I got that vibe early on, and then when he was lining it up at the end and he had the clear shot and he was just
Mm,
staring at the deer's face, he was like staring back. I
yeah.
think he was just like, I can't do this. Um,
Yeah, I think that maybe maybe I do agree with you because Jaden, I feel like he was a strong enough kid to have his own thoughts and ideas, and he wasn't just going to do something to impress his dad. So yeah,
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 and so I'd grown with that, and I didn't want Buck to just change who he was because Jaden didn't shoot a deer,
mm,
but I liked the fact that he had that thought of he lined it up the exact same way Jaden did, and he stopped and he's like, oh, you know what, I get it, I kind of
yeah.
get
Don't
what
have to do
Jaden
it.
was doing, and then he
Mm,
went back to it because that's what he does, and I'm okay with that, but I still didn't have to see him shoot it, which was good. So it was
yeah,
really well handled that final shot.
good. All right, time to talk about some things that we didn't necessarily like.
Yeah.
I've I the thing that really that I didn't like, and this was straight up at the start of the film, where I really thought that the footage that they were cutting in for their TV show in between what was actually happening.
Oh yeah.
I thought they were quite lame, and I didn't find those parts humorous like I did with the actual
Mm.
relationship stuff between the actual characters. But I appreciate and I can understand why they included them and used them. But this could have just even if you wiped out that whole idea of them doing it for a TV show, you can still have that story, that father son story,
It's a
going on
really
a
good
hunting
point.
trip with a mate, and that mate can still be that character that that plays off Buck, but yeah, you didn't necessarily have to have it to do with. It probably would have been even more impactful about this relationship with this new dad figure in the life and things like that, rather than having these little, little side bits of footage.
I hadn't thought about
Mm.
that, but I 100% agree with you because there's obviously a bit of tweaking that you need to do about why Don's there and this whole because they've got a working relationship, right? But there's definitely ways around this, and the setup is a little bit different. I agree. I think it's a far better story.
Yeah. All right. Well, what didn't you like about this one?
Is that all, Jesse?
Yeah, that's all I
I'll be frank. You've spoken about a few of mine, but you spoke about them in the wrong section.
got.
When they were talking about crossing that rope, and he made Don do it first, that was really tired really quickly.
Yeah.
Like that gag wore off really quickly. The dirty pictures that he showed, followed by that father-son chat. Nah, not for me.
Like it was you just weren't expecting it, and I understand.
To be,
Oh my
you know
god!
what?
Like,
Yeah, maybe. Like, I'm not saying that it wasn't a little bit funny, and I wasn't
yeah,
offended by it, but like, I was just like, "Where's this story?" And that's, I think, I told you I had so much trouble with Don. I couldn't, like,
yeah.
this guy does a really cool thing about giving him his phone and then telling Buck saying, "Hey, you know what? I gave him a phone. Like, this is a good guy." And then he goes and does that. I'm like, who is this guy? So, I think it
He's like
just threw me.
that cool. He's like that cool sort of uncle that
It
you know.
toes the line a bit.
Yeah, and when you go back to school, you're like, oh, I got to spend this time with my uncle, and he showed me porn. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And then you
Yeah,
turn like 18, 19, you're like, hang on, he was a
he was a
weird
bit of a
dude.
creepy. He's a bit of a creepy uncle. Yeah.
um, there was one shot. I don't know if you noticed this. So Don had already buggered off, and there was just the two of them. They were marching up that hill, the final hill, till they got over there. There was one shot where it was snowing whilst they were climbing that hill, and then
Oh.
there was no more snow in any other shot. It was like a 3 second shot, and I stopped it and I rewound it. I watched it again, and it was just snowing for 3 seconds, and then it stopped. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that was supposed to be like this was such a long journey that there
Long
was a bit
journey.
of snow. Like, just
Yeah.
it didn't
That
work
was
for me.
that was exactly that was my explanation for it. Yeah, maybe they were just trying to
Yeah.
show that they've been traveling for days. I don't know. Yeah.
There's been no suggestion of snow in this whole movie.
Nah, not at all.
I didn't like it when he shot Don. But again, I think I was just a bit tired with it by that point. I was like, I don't need another. Look, I don't know what we're carving out of this, but this is going to be like a 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes of something that I don't know if I need. And
Yep.
I didn't mind the White River rafting stuff. That was kind of cool. But shooting Don at the time, I was like, oh, why are we doing
Fair
this?
enough.
But even worse than that was when Jaden does parkour to get across to get to Don, almost as if like, hey, remember that parkour we showed you earlier? Yeah, it came back. Like, and he got there
Yeah.
like a second before his dad.
Well, yeah, true. Yeah, that is very true.
And the final thing I didn't like, where if I was to say to you, my father was a hunter and I was his son, would you think of the worst song that you've ever heard in your life? When
uh,
he's like, I wrote
um,
you a song, I was like, okay, I'm alright with this. And like the only lyrics was my father was a hunter and I was his son. And like,
yeah,
try a
but
little bit harder. Like, you just
you
told
got
this
the setup
story
earlier. You got the setup earlier on that he probably wasn't
that
the
he's
greatest on
useless
his
on the
guitar.
guitar.
Yeah,
I know. His lyrics, like, oh,
yeah.
I was like,
My
and then
it's
you
okay.
go. I was just
I was
gonna
just
say,
gonna
the credits, how they had that song in the credits.
yeah,
Did you notice that?
yeah. The first song in the credits. Yeah,
It was just like it was like they'd made a song out of it.
yeah. I think it was written by Jody Hill.
Well,
As
I
well.
could, my dog
Yeah.
could have written it. Like there's 6 words in it.
My cheeks are hurting that I've been smiling so much the last 5 minutes. Just going back over this. Because yeah,
That's
I'm
good.
thoroughly finding these scenes that you didn't like funny again, and I just spoke about them 5 minutes ago.
Jesse, that's why we do this podcast because
Uh,
watching a movie is not as good until you get to talk about it.
yeah. Oh man. Okay. Is that it? Are you done with the
That's it.
things you
No,
didn't
yeah,
like?
that's it. That's
Okay.
it.
All right. Good. All right. Well, fill me in on what you think this film's trying to say through its themes or its ideas.
Yeah, it's saying a lot, and I respect it. there's a big commentary on the father son relationship, and again, this is one of those things that's there's no right or wrong, and there's no strong stance on how you should be doing it. But I like the exploration of a father son and that generational gap and that separation that's there. And similarly with that, the whole idea of a divorced family, like so much of this movie, despite them not being in it, is about his wife and her partner. Like he obviously calls her a few times, and we get a backstory as to why they might have broken up, and that all kind of comes in as well to that lack of connection that Buck all of a sudden has. And I think you get the impression that he always had it somewhat because he was so at home when he was out hunting, but how strong that can get and how that broken family can really impact you. And there's just a lot. There's a lot there, and what I like about it is it's not trying to tell you 10 different stories like we had a couple of weeks ago. Every little theme that it has kind of links into the other one and tells a wider story.
Yeah, completely agree. Like the that idea about the father son sort of stuff too leads into like a little bit of masculinity too, and these men lost in the woods, like, but hunting is what they know, or what Buck knows anyway, and
Yeah,
even though that he's lost in the woods and they can't, it sort of symbolizes that losing of control of everything else, and that manhood that he's lost with that divorce, like you speak about, and
yeah,
a new
good
dad in the
call.
house, and yeah, that idea too, like this old school idea that hunting is this pastime, which might not be seen as such an important thing in American life these days, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
um,
oh yeah,
and yeah, and they sort of have this idea too. Like, you mentioned it, I think it was having a little bit of a whack at hunting, and um, and they do this through, like, the Buck idolizes this American sort of way, and it's done through that scene where they're talking about cheese, and he's like, I don't like stuff just
mm,
better because it's foreign, sort of thing, and this whole hunting sort of idea, and um you know you see it through Jaden, where the phones and the technology and no Wi-Fi, it's sort of saying maybe the values have changed, and the ideas of where tradition and family tradition can be has sort of moved on a little bit too.
yeah. You're right. And again, everything you said, it really just ties into
Yeah, it
itself, and
does. Yeah.
it's a clean, it's a precise kind of story, and I kind of like that, and I wish it had and sorry, it did resonate with me. It did.
Hmm.
I've got no qualms with all that. Oh, you know what?
All
You
right.
said "Lost in the Woods" a few times. Is that a song in Frozen 2?
Lustin. Yeah, that's the hands dude, doesn't he?
So that
Christoph.
is,
Christoph.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
I
that's that '80s ballad song that you did not like.
No, I like that song. I didn't like any other
I
song in
did. I
Frozen
didn't like
2.
any other song. Okay.
Yeah, that's a song that sounds like it should be sung by Michael Bolton. Yeah, but
Yeah. I think Taylor Swift possibly has a song called "Lost in the Woods" as well.
actually,
I can't remember.
I like Taylor Woods. Sorry, Taylor Woods. I like Taylor Swift's country roots. I don't like it when she
Yeah.
goes a bit all what's that bad
Yeah.
blood, and she
Yeah.
lost me then. But I have seen Taylor Swift in concert.
Mm. Me too. I thought you were going to say you like Tiger Woods. I was like, we're talking too much about Wood. So, have you seen Toy Story? I like Woody too. All right. What did you take away from this one? What are your thoughts?
Well, firstly, I think this conversation will probably be one of the main things I take away. This has been a lot of fun to talk about. But
Okay.
to be honest, I'll sadly be remembering this film as a bit of a "Why did you do this, Josh Brolin" kind of movie.
Okay.
I just don't know where it fits in with what he was trying to get out of it, and I think that's only because I love him so much. And but other than that, there's just not much that will stay with me. I didn't actively dislike this film. It just didn't. It never really struck a chord with me. But I do think it's really well placed on Netflix because I think it's one of those movies that if it had a theatrical release, people most likely wouldn't have rushed out to see it, and probably they would have just waited for it to be released or be available on any sort of streaming service. So I think it was a good choice by the producers. I think it's a calculated choice by Netflix to get a Josh Brolin starred comedy with Danny McBride.
Hmm.
But I just like looking at the numbers that we saw. Maybe it didn't quite work. I can see where the decision came from, though.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I think this was, like, for me, it's like an easy film to sort of sit back and watch, and
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't like mind having it on in the background when I don't
Mm,
really need to concentrate on something. Sometimes you put like Scrubs on, or
yep.
you put Rick and Morty on in the background, or The Simpsons, or something just in the background while you're doing something else. And this is
Yep.
probably one where I would chuck on in the background, and then if I see the scene where where Don's in the tent with Jaden showing his photos, I might be like, oh, you got my attention again.
Sit down for
So
15 minutes and
yeah,
get yourself back in.
yeah, keep going, go back to the vacuuming. But yeah, that's Yeah, that's my thoughts on this one.
I like
Yeah.
that, Jesse. I used to do that a lot more when I was younger.
Mm,
Put a movie on for the background, but I find now I'm just too engaged. And if I start, and this used to be the case all the time, if I put a movie on the background, I'd always watch the last half hour, and all of a sudden I'm just sitting there watching it. But movies, yeah, I'd love to do it more, but I find myself I just watch it.
the last time I tried to do that, it was a massive fail. I put the Hateful Eight on.
Oh,
The
that's a
brother-in-law was over,
dense
and,
movie.
yeah, I know, and I put it on the background. I'm like, why did I put this on in the background? Poor choice
You
by
have you
me.
you'd seen it before though, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen it
Yeah,
before, but
you can never do it
no.
with a movie you haven't seen. I used to do it with the movie Ghost Rider with Ewan McGregor,
Pierce
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 Brosnan.
Brosnan, yeah.
Yep, I
Mm,
quite
yeah,
enjoyed putting that one in the back. It's one of those movies I sneakily enjoyed, and I probably still don't even really know why.
oh, good.
But it was a good background that I always watched like the last half hour, 45 minutes, just sitting there anyway, and defeated the purpose of the chore or the task that I was doing in the first
Yeah,
place.
I agree. All right. IMDb, did you go on at all?
No, I didn't. Not for this
No.
film.
Good. Me either. We will keep moving. I think it's been a while since neither of us did. So, but
A
you know,
small
there's only
cast,
the
and
three.
we,
Yeah,
we
small
we knew the
cast.
two main ones. So
Yep. Good. All right. Question time. If you got anything you want to ask me?
just one.
Yes.
Why didn't they try and retrieve that four wheeler? Because to me, it was down a hill, not off a cliff, and it
Yep.
didn't look in the worst shape.
Hmm.
I would have
How many
checked it out.
did they have? That did they have two at the start? They had two,
They
didn't
had
they?
two. Yeah, they had
Yeah.
two.
So they used the one to escape at the end, and then the other one was still there. Maybe it was too hard to
Correct.
get it back up the cliff. It was too heavy. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It annoyed me they didn't bother checking it out because
Checking it.
either that or they should have, if they wanted it for the plot, really smashed it up. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
for the filming of this, they actually returned that and they were like, yeah, cool, all done. They didn't want to smash it up too much, but if
Smash
they
it up.
wanted me to believe it, they would have like taken a wheel off or something.
Or it could have just jumped when it fell off the cliff, just burst into flames. That would have been a good
Yeah,
laugh.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good. All right. You've already spoken about this a bit, but I don't know whether we answered this. That final shot. Do you think that Buck shot the deer? You don't. I don't. You don't think he did?
No, I do think he did.
You do think he did? Okay.
I do think he did.
Hmm.
I'm glad that he hesitated because it
Yeah.
showed that he had that understanding of where his son stood, and I'm glad they didn't show it because I didn't want to see it, but I think he did.
So why didn't they just leave the camera on him and you just hear the bullet go off and you don't see the deer? If
I don't think it matters. I think the ambiguity is still quite nice because if you think that he had a such an epiphanous moment with his son that
yeah.
he understood his mindset and didn't want to shoot that deer anymore, then you're allowed to have that thought, and I want you to take that out of the movie, and I'm cool with that. I don't think
Okay.
it got to that point, um, but I respect that ambiguity and for
Okay.
people to make their own opinion on it. Do you think he shot it?
A part of me thinks he does. I
Yeah, yeah.
think. Yeah. I just think that for him to have for this weekend to be fully successful, he needed to have killed something. Just
Did he need
that's a
to?
part.
I think to be successful, Jaden needed to do it, and he needed to do it with that gun.
But
But
his the whole idea of him killing that deer was or wanting to kill a deer was so that Jaden would feel that connection with him. He got that connection with him, so for him to still feel that power in his life and that not just with Jaden and that relationship, but that wilderness being his sort of vice. I just felt
mm,
that he needed to kill that deer to say this has been a fully successful weekend, not just yes I've got my son back, but yes I've got my manhood back too.
yeah, I
Um,
like that. And there was, I think Don made a point early on that he's like, no matter what happens, he always gets his deer. Like
yeah,
that's his thing.
yeah.
Like he doesn't stop till he gets it.
Hmm. One other thing. Do you think that this film would appeal to the female gender at all, or do you think that this film just would resonate a lot better with males just because of that father son story?
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
reckon you're
Yeah,
probably right.
yeah. I was just thinking, like, possibly, like, if I, yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was a very male oriented film. That, yeah, it didn't really give an inkling to making that. I get they gave it a little bit of balance with the divorce, but it was just very much about this the boy side of the story. Yeah, I don't know. That's where I felt with
Yeah,
that.
it's a hard one because I mean, I could watch a movie about a mother and a daughter, and you know what, and probably not get as much out of it.
Mm,
But probably because this film, in my opinion, had less ammunition than say like a Ladybird, for example, which was a big sort of mother-daughter thing. This movie had a lot less for it. I think a lot of females watching this, it would probably fall pretty flat, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't hate it, but there'd just be not a lot to take out of it.
Yep.
But you
Good.
know
All
what?
right.
Everyone's different, and movies are so subjective. So I feel
Exactly.
insane saying anything
Yeah,
like
we
that.
can't make an assumption for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, time to wrap this one up. The end of our show, we give the film a rating out of 5 to give us a Flicks Forum average. So, MJ, what are your final thoughts on this one?
Well, as you know, like I wanted to like this movie going into it, but it just lost me early, and I was never really able to get back into it. So I love Josh Brolin, even he couldn't win me over. So I do appreciate some of the messaging around the broken families and the separation from reality and separation from your family that came out of it. I do think that was nice, and it just didn't do a lot for me. But it's still 2 stars.
Nice, good. All right, well, yeah, I enjoyed this one a little bit more. And it kind of surprised me a little bit too because I had pretty low expectations going in. If it's a comedy that you haven't heard of before with Josh Brolin and Danny McBride, then I didn't have high expectations at all, and yeah, enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I thought it was sweet. I thought the message was quite obvious, but it was nice, and yeah, I found it really enjoyable. So I'm giving it a 3 out of 5,
Good.
which gives us an average of a 2.5,
It does.
which is probably fair and sits where most of the consensus online is.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So we are on social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. We are
Oh
on
yeah.
there. Give us a shout out, give us a like, give us a retweet, whatever you can. Question for this week was, have you been hunting before or are you against hunting? And I think I know the answer for this one for you. You've pretty much said this throughout the show, I think.
I'll be honest. I've never been hunting.
Mm.
I was never against hunting. But after
Mm.
watching this, I'm like, I don't think I
Yeah.
want to. I don't think I want to kill an animal. I don't know
Yeah.
if I've got that in me. I don't think I do. No, in fact, no,
Yeah.
I don't have it in me.
Yeah, me either. I'm not no interest whatsoever, and I don't want to go purposely hunting something at
Yeah,
all. Good.
yeah. There
Okay.
you go.
Well, we are back again next week with our next film.
Oh,
I'm always excited for another chat. So this week or next week we have a action thriller from 2018.
cool.
It's called How It Ends. It's directed by David M. Rosenthal. It stars Theo James, Forrest Whitaker, Grace Dove, Kat Graham, and Mark O'Brien. So only one name that I recognize in that
It's a good
list.
name though.
Yeah, it is a very good name. Panic Room and Phone Booth, Last King of Scotland. A
He won
couple
the
of,
Oscar for that.
I think he did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rogue. He was in Rogue One, wasn't he? I think the Star
He,
Wars
he
film.
was in Rogue One.
He was,
Yeah,
yeah,
very very minor role. I remember him being
yeah.
like really big key name, and it wasn't in it for that long.
Hmm. Good. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you about that one next week.
Me too. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching
And
this one. I've actually heard
and
of this one.
oh, you have?
Yep, I have.
Good. Haven't seen it though.
Haven't seen it. When we first announced that we were doing this podcast, before we'd even started it, a guy I knew hit me up and said, "Let me know when you do How It Ends." I was like,
Ooh.
"Okay, fair enough."
Well, we're there. So
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
oh,
mate, we're not going to be there for a very long time, and we made it.
good. Well, this one I've laughed quite a lot, and I've really enjoyed this chat. So thank you very much for letting me relive this film.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. You make me want to rewatch it, and I've got no qualms with putting this on again one day. And maybe I'll do it when I'm doing some jobs around the house. Maybe I'll try your theory.
I think that's the perfect place to put it on a rewatch.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be too connected to it.
Good. All right. Well, yeah, I'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it, mate. Chat then.